All right, let's get into this. We're going to dive into a really powerful story about knowledge, about silence, and, well, a kind of wisdom that you just can't teach. So for 40 years, there was this master teacher named Uddalaka. And I mean, this guy had all the answers. He was practically an institution, a total beacon of clarity out there in his forest hermitage. But deep down, something was starting to feel off. A question he couldn't quite put his finger on was growing inside him. After all those decades of teaching, he'd sometimes hear his own voice and wonder, is this the truth? Or is it just something I've repeated so many times that it feels true? I mean, you have to understand, Uddalaka's forest hermitage was a landmark. His reputation for being able to break down the most complicated ideas for basically anyone, princes, priests, you name it, was second to none. His whole life was this cycle of questions and answers. For 40 years straight, students came from all over the country. His little hermitage literally grew into a village of learning. And his teachings, they became these famous, almost legendary dialogues. But right at that 40-year mark, all of that success started to feel, well, empty. And right into that hollow space, a student shows up who is about to break all the rules without saying a single word. Now, this was a huge contrast to what he was used to. You see, a typical student would show up with questions, they'd have a name, they'd have their belongings, all ready to soak up knowledge. This young man, though, he arrived with absolutely nothing, wouldn't even give a name, and just offered this profound, kind of unsettling presence. So when Uddalaka finally pressed him, his response just made the whole thing even more mysterious. It wasn't that he couldn't speak, it was a choice. And his silence seemed to suggest that maybe questions themselves, the very foundation of Uddalaka's entire life's work, might actually be the problem. An entire year goes by. A whole year. And Uddalaka, who's starting to feel like his own teaching is just plain absurd in the face of this quiet student, finally confronts him by the river one evening. He just had to know. How on earth was this student learning more in total silence than all the others did through endless talking and debate? How is this possible? He finally asks. And the student's answer? Wow, it just cracked the very foundation of Uddalaka's 40-year career. He wasn't there to gain something new. He was there to undo what he already thought he knew. So what does that even mean, unlearning? It's not about forgetting things, not at all. It's about peeling back the layers, undoing what has been learned so you can finally see what was always there underneath. It's like removing all these blockages of accumulated knowledge to get to a much more direct truth. The student went on to explain that this endless chase for answers actually creates a wall between you and the truth. You, he said to Uddalaka, spend your life answering questions about water while you're dying of thirst. What an image. And this, right here, is where that brilliant analogy comes from. The teaching, the scriptures, the lectures, all of it is just a finger pointing at the moon. The truth? That's the moon itself. The tragedy, the student explained, happens when we get so obsessed with studying the finger that we completely forget to look up at the moon. So that single conversation by the river changed Uddalaka completely. He started this radical new kind of instruction, what you might call the teaching of not teaching. He just stopped giving clear answers. People would ask a question and he'd respond with silence, or maybe another question. And the effect was immediate. The place emptied out fast. I mean, within a month, half the students were gone, totally frustrated. But the few who stayed, they were the ones who were okay with uncertainty. And a whole new rhythm of learning through silence started to take hold. The shift was just total. Think about it. Uddalaka went from a guy who answered every single question to one who would just ask, well, what is asking? Structured talks were replaced by these long, profound silences. The goal was no longer to pile up more and more knowledge, but to embrace the precision of not knowing. He wasn't building certainty anymore, he was dissolving it.
And this really gets to the heart of it. The real transmission, the actual teaching, wasn't happening in what was said. It was happening in what was left unsaid. Real learning was taking place in the silence. In that moment, you stop the endless search for answers and just see what's already right here.
And this all builds up to Uddalaka's final days, and to what you could call his ultimate insight. In his very last discourse, he let them in on the big secret, the most profound teaching of all. The one they called the Missing Upanishad. It isn't a lost text. It's missing for a much bigger reason, because it's the one thing that can never, ever be written down.
True wisdom, he taught them, isn't found in the words themselves. It's in the silence that gives the words their meaning. It's there in the gap before a question even forms, and in the space after an answer fades away. It's the space you see, not the stuff in the space.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In our world, a world just flooded with information and answers on demand, what if the wisdom we're all really looking for isn't found in getting more knowledge, but in finding the courage to just stop asking and simply be present with what is?